Hi, it's Dino from FFTV, The High Press, and today we're going to look at Brighton's recruitment model. So what makes Brighton the envy of most Premier League clubs when it comes to transfers? Let's find out. When a club loses their top players, the fans instantly think, what on earth's going on? We're a selling club. And during the last season, unfortunately for the Brighton fans, they lost their hero manager, Graham Potter, to Chelsea, and a new replacement came in, De Zerbi. Those of us outside of Brighton probably thought, this is Brighton going to struggle now, but it couldn't be farther from the truth. De Zerbi just fit into the current model. So Brighton are a profitable club. In the 2021-22 accounts, they made a £24 million profit, whereas a lot of clubs in the Premier League were showing a loss. David Weir, the technical director of Brighton, openly admits that they can't afford to buy Premier-ready footballers. So finding hidden gems and then selling them on for a fee is fine. It's good profitability for the club. But what are Brighton playing at? Well, they're building wealth for the future. And if they make the profits they have been making in recent times, certainly on the transfers, but at some point, they're then going to be able to retain their players. So let's put some further analysis on this. Let's look at this chart here. These aren't all the transfers, but they're the transfer highlights. Now, Marc Cucurella, who struggled at Chelsea, was bought for 15.4 million and sold for 63. Ben White came through the under-23s and got sold to Arsenal for 50 million. And the story goes on all the way down with a total of 53 million pounds spent on those players and 211 million in outgoings of those players. So that gives them a total profit on those players at 158 million. We can't forget this guy, Moisés Caicedo. They signed him in January 2021. He cost 3.8 million, and they've already had a bid turned down from Arsenal earlier on in the year at 70 million, and they're looking for no less than 100 million pounds for this player, who was also the Brighton Player of the Year last season. I've already mentioned Chelsea, and here we can see their arrivals and departures over the last 3 seasons. So as you can see on the left, the total of 839.2 million was bought into the club, with departures totaling 235 million, which gives them a profit and loss, or a loss at minus 604.2 million pounds. So totally different to the Brighton model. You can also argue that Brighton are in a much better position than Chelsea. Chelsea had a pretty bad season last season with the amount of money they'd spent, and had gone on to sack Graham Potter. Brighton, on the other hand, have a constant flow of these youngsters. And like players like Caicedo, they've got Mitoma, who was bought in August 21 for £3 million. He had a standout season last season. After he was bought, he was loaned out for a year and then came back and made the whole Premier League admire and watch from afar. Just take a look at his market value rise. There are a stack of these at Brighton. We've got the likes of João Pedro from Watford, Evan Ferguson, the 18-year-old attracting interest from Manchester United and Liverpool, Buenanote from Rosario Central for 6 million for an 18-year-old Argentinian with stacks of potential. Yazin Azari is another one, 19 from Sweden for 4 million with huge potential. So with all of these ins and outs, you would think that Brighton would struggle, but if you look at the rise of Brighton from this league table, you can see that it's not really impacting anything that they're doing. So how are they doing it? Well, owner-chairman Tony Bloom has developed his own AI software that filters the whole market with a secret algorithm. And they've used this tool for the past 32 players that they've signed. Once the tool has highlighted people that fit the play style and the positions on the pitch, the scouts are then sent a list of names to watch and compile reports from the data checklist. There's a traffic light system, green, amber, red, with green being there'd be a great fit for the club. Amber is close to meeting the criteria, and red is to continue monitoring. Generally, there are 3 levels of recruitment focus for many clubs. Players that are ready now, players that are ready now and for the future, and players that are just ready for the future. Now, Brighton don't tend to touch players ready for now, but they have made some changes this year, signing players like Milner and Dahoud. Not so many years ago, managers used to come in and make their own decisions. They used to change their own backroom staff. They used to bring their own players in, and players fit their model. Since the advent of technical directors, sporting directors and recruitment directors who have more of a decision, and the club's managers then become the club's coaches, a lot of clubs have struggled with this change. And what you see is a lot of dysfunctional operations within the recruitment down to the playing staff. Lots and lots of stories from different clubs saying that the manager or the head coach didn't want this certain player and then they fall out of favour. But Brighton have the perfect understanding of this model and how it works. And they even choose their managers in the same way to fit their play model. One of the benefits of buying younger players for the future and selling them on is that they have a very low wage model. And they have the second lowest wage bill in the Premier League behind Brentford, another club that are potentially overachieving. It's not just the far-flung places that they look, but they look at La Liga, with only really 3 clubs in Atletico, Barcelona and Real Madrid able to beat a lot of Premier clubs on wages. Brighton know that they can offer up to 3 times the salary that the rest of the La Liga clubs can offer, highlighting the fact that they bought Estepinian from Villarreal for 15 million, replacing Cucurella for 63 million to Chelsea. So where do Brighton focus their efforts in the transfer market? Well, they're looking at emerging continents and emerging countries because they don't want to pay the extra, which we call English tax. And I think they embrace the fact that they know that players are coming here for a stepping stone. They're going to be on lower salaries and they're just trying to increase the value and increase the club's wealth. The current manager, De Zerbi, said, "I'm getting used to working with the algorithms in another way in the transfer market, and I'm getting used to appreciating this way. I didn't know it before. I spent a lot of time studying new players on video, but now I understand there's another way to find players. At Sassuolo and Shakhtar, it was totally different. I had one of my team who gave me players' name and I studied the players without the numbers, without data, only on video." So other than the owner, who else has helped create this success at Brighton? Well, Sam Jewell has stepped into the role of head of recruitment at the age of 33 after working his way up over the last 7 years from under-21s recruitment manager and emerging talent scouting manager. And he played a significant part in signing players like Caicedo, McAllister, Buonanotte and Paraguay prospect Julio Enciso. While we're all playing computer games in COVID lockdown, he was learning Spanish so he could communicate better in South America. Mistakes are made though in any recruitment process, and a total of £30 million was spent on Dutch forward Jurgen Locadia from PSV Eindhoven in January 2018, and another player from Eredivisie, Iran winger, you're going to have to forgive me on this, Alireza Janagambash. I've completely butchered that, but never mind. This is understandable, but the hit rate with most clubs in terms of success against failure in transfers is much lower than Brighton's. They've had admirers from afar in the Premier League, with David Moyes saying that he's been watching the Brighton model and he's really impressed with that. And other major admirers of the club are Newcastle. Dan Ashworth has been the FA's Director of Elite Development for 6 years, and then Newcastle stole him from Brighton. And he's essentially replicating the Brighton model at Newcastle with a few tweaks. Now Newcastle are bringing in scouts throughout Europe and South America and overhauling the youth recruitment also, bringing in specialists both here and abroad in that role. Brighton aren't the only club in the world that has this sort of recruitment drive and policy. Clubs like Benfica and Borussia Dortmund have also followed the same process with great and profitable success. So in conclusion, I for one are completely jealous of Brighton's model. I'd love my own club to do the same. We're a bit dysfunctional in our recruitment policy, certainly over the last year. And to become a real sustainable club in the Premier League, this has to be a major factor. And because there's such of a gap now between the top 4 and the rest, having this model in place will actually provide ongoing success for the future and wealth building, which is important with the FFP rules. I'd like to know what you think about your own club's transfer policy and recruitment policy, and whether you believe that it matches Brighton's or is on the way. Please leave your feedback down in the comments. And if you like this sort of content, please like and subscribe. It helps a lot. Subscribe to @FFTV The High Press, and I'll see you next time.